Today on the Priority Podcast.
Comparison distorts reality because you don't see all of the reality of the person that you're comparing to. And the thing about that type of comparison is that it brings the shame or the unworthiness, the unworthy feelings, and that's the red flag.
Welcome to Priority Podcast, leveraging life experiences for the sake of the kingdom. We help you rise as a resilient, Christ-centered woman, rooted in truth, steady in the struggle, and confident in your calling. Here's our host, Carmen.
Hi, friends, and welcome to the Priority Podcast. We're glad that you are back with us and listening in, and hopeful that you're getting some information and resources and just content that's being able to meet you where you're at, and also to be able to pass that along to a friend, maybe in current time, or somebody that maybe you're putting this in a library of knowledge that you can reach back out to. And we've heard from some of you guys that, about the content being valuable and just practical, and that's what we're going for. How do we give you some tools that can help you on this journey? So welcome back. We hope that's what you're going to hear today too. So back with me, you have the ladies that you're getting to know well. We have Leslie and Amy and Carla, and we've had some life since we've been here last time. We got upcoming marriages. We've got new grandbabies. New Carla. I'm trying to think of life milestone moments since we...
Yeah, let's see. I guess the most recent is that my 25-year-old daughter is moving back home.
Oh.
In order to spend the next year applying for medical school and to get some surgery on her knee. So, yeah, she's heartbroken about it because she didn't want to do that, but I'm so excited.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So hopefully it'll be a good, but that's a big life change, you know, 25-year-old adult kiddo coming back. So.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that goes to what we're doing here. Life always brings transitions, right? And there's always things that's just part of life. We don't have to diagnose it. It's just life. We just need to learn to navigate it. So today, you guys are in for a treat. We're going to be talking about comparison. Now, they send me the notes and the content to read ahead of time and some suggested questions, and we'll see how it goes, but I don't always like the topic of comparison. And I found myself writing notes thinking just stick to the outline, Carmen, stick to the outline, so because I do think there's a thing that there is comparison, which you're going to talk about, but I also think there's that time we go and observe because we're wanting to learn or to grow or to make improvements, and that's not what we're talking about here today. So anyway, so I'm excited, and you're going to hear more from them than me. So Leslie, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to you because this is your topic
Carmen.
today.
I'm excited to talk about this topic today because it is, I think we all deal with it, but I've dealt with it starting in about fourth grade. You get those mean girls in fourth grade and they're like, you don't belong because you don't have this color shirt or that type of shirt or that type of shoes or, all the things, right? And so we learn at an early age, or at least I did, that I had to check all the boxes in order to be accepted, right? And that is not you just can tell the enemy just inserted this little lie right there, and it has just gone from there until the Lord said, no, your worth and your belonging is in me. And then all that comparison just doesn't mean anything. It just kind of falls away if you allow it. Allow it. Yeah. But so we're going to talk about comparison as a topic today. And so one of the things that I Googled it, because we all have to start with a definition. Right? So I Googled it. Here's what Google had to say about comparison. The number one drawback to comparison is that it causes you to compare your internal realities, right? Your insecurities and your struggles with someone else's external facade. And that external facade is usually, Sunday morning church or Reels or Facebook. It's like the perfect thing. And you don't get to see reality and what reality is.
Their own internal struggles.
Yes, you don't get to see their own internal struggles. And that's why our stories are so important. I remember on a past podcast we talked about how God is writing our stories, and we're going to camp on that again today when it comes to comparison, because it is so fundamental to our own personal kingdom work. I believe that our stories is the most transitional pivotal thing
Yeah.
in our own personal kingdom work. So anyway, okay.
What is it, Revelation 11? We will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the
And
word
the
of our
word of our
testimony.
testimony. Yes, the word of our testimony. But the Master's Counseling calls comparison toxic behavior, and psychology today calls it a trap. And I'm like, yeah, that it is a trap, because when we get started in that and increase that as a habit, and then it gets reinforced,
Yeah.
you know, and it gets positively reinforced because the circle of friends are like, oh yeah, now you belong,
Yeah.
you know, and really the Lord is saying, no, the thing that matters is your eyes focused on me, you know. And so I just,
I love the idea. I love the visual of the trap. I had these little moths in my house this spring. They were everywhere. And I bought these traps. They're triangle cardboard traps, and they have sticky on the inside and pheromones. And so the little moths come in and they stick. And that's what I'm seeing. When we get into these comparative modes, we're just stuck like those little moths. We can't get off. I mean,
Yeah,
they
right.
die there. I'm sorry
Yeah,
for that.
but it is it is
Yeah.
a death. It is a death trap, because anything that takes your eyes off of Jesus, like any sin or any entrapment of the enemy, is death. I mean, and that's what that's what the enemy wants.
Because you keep trying. Like you're just like spinning your wheels.
That
'cause
little moth was
you just
trying.
keep
Trying to get
keep
out.
trying to you look on social media and you see somebody's, and I tell my clients this, because I'm like, if you looking at my office from a screen, it looks really nice and neat, because all they can see is my table behind me and my pictures
That's
and my
right.
books,
Yes.
but they can't see the mess everywhere else.
Yes.
And so I think, social media, we see these people, or even at church, you see the moms with like their little kids, like just walking, like ducklings behind them. You don't know what went into like trying to get them there when your kid's laying on the floor screaming.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm a horrible mom. I need to be more like that mom. But you don't see what they did to get there.
Right.
Or what
what
they're
will happen
dealing
after.
with. Yeah.
Right.
Or what they're dealing with on the inside.
Right.
Yeah.
Or how many Sundays of practice it took to. I've got some mom stories I could tell you. Oh my word. Oh my word. But we'll save that for another podcast. So we're going to talk about 4 sticky problems with comparison. And
Now
so,
I'm thinking of your trap.
That, I think she did that on
right?
purpose.
Yes. Right. So yes, 4 sticky. It does say sneaky, but they're sticky.
So much better. I
They're
love how you just
sticky.
like grabbed that and ran with it.
Yes, they're sticky. The first one is that comparison distorts reality. We were just talking about that, because you don't see all of the reality of the person that you're comparing to. And the thing about that type of comparison is that it brings the shame or the unworthiness, the unworthy feelings, and that's the red flag. When you're like you were talking about, Carmen, sometimes we compare, but it's a comparison of maybe somebody who's following Christ, and that comparison is drawing us to, hey, I could do this better.
Yeah.
It's like when
More
Paul,
like discipleship.
Yes, more like discipleship. And it's like when Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. But like you said, that's not the comparison that we're talking about. The comparison that we're talking about here brings a feeling of inadequacy, shame, anxiety, increased anxiety, and just an overall sense that something must be wrong, or wrong with you or wrong with your story, something like that. But when you compare to somebody and it distorts, you're not looking at comparison distorts that reality.
Yeah.
The truth is that we rarely compare to the full story. So here's a helpful reframe. Instead of asking, why don't I have what she has? Ask, how might the Lord be using my story? Because our stories are important, Or what story might God be writing in my life that I don't know yet? And I think that's an important one to consider, because that shows, well, I might not feel like I have a story, but I have faith that God is still doing something in my life, even when I don't feel like I have a
He's
story.
still the author.
Yes, he's still the author. I heard an amazing song this morning, Brandon Lake, I think, and the line in it is, I am the ink in the pen of the author. And I'm like, yes,
That's
like,
beautiful.
That's what we want to be, right? Is the ink
Yeah.
in
Mother
the
Teresa
pen.
said something like that. She said, "I'm just a little pencil in the hand of a loving, writing Savior," or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. And it just all
I'm trying to stay focused, but I want that on my wall.
I
know.
know,
I know.
right?
I'm like, if I ever get another tattoo, I'm going to do a little pencil based on that quote. It's
That
so
is
good.
so it,
We'll have to look
isn't
that
it?
up after.
Right?
Yeah.
That is so it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that scripture is very clear in Galatians 6, 4, and 5 when it talks about how we should handle comparison in our lives. It says, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load.
Yeah.
And that means we shouldn't be looking to other people to gauge if we're doing our story right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes me think of when the disciples came up to Jesus and we're talking about like who was going to sit next to him and all that, and he's like, or like who's going to die, who's going to be there, and he's like, what is that of your concern? Pretty much, you do what I'm calling you to do, and let me worry about
Yes.
and stay in your lane.
I love
I
Yes,
think it's
totally.
important though that you guys are saying that because we're human and those thoughts do come
Absolutely.
up, and confession, how many times I have to take those very thoughts captive.
Absolutely.
God, why am I critical here? Why am I, and I wrote a note down as you were talking earlier that, and one of you all had this in a content for an upcoming or a past, that Christy McClellan hits this in her Bible studies though, that the New Testament church lived they lived in a posture of generosity versus scarcity.
Yep.
And,
Abundance versus scarcity.
Yes, abundance, yes.
Yep.
And sometimes, yes, they could be generous because they felt like they couldn't give it away as fast as God could replace it. But sometimes I think for myself, that if I'm honest, that comparison can be rooted in fear of more of a scarcity.
Yes.
Like, what if I'm not keeping up? Where does that put me? Well, if I'm not in the game, right, then not only me, how does that impact, like a lot of you guys are mothers, and how does that impact the people I'm responsible for? Or take that back into the church. What if my church isn't, I've got 25 youth and somebody else has 100 and they might have 75 of the ones I had last month. You know what I mean? I can see where that crosses, that I just have to take it thought. But I think some of that is rooted in, and I don't know, you're the counselors, not me. I think we do that sometimes.
Absolutely.
We put metrics on people or performance.
Yeah.
Though we might not realize we're doing it. That sets them up for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we get stuck in that in a ministry perspective of anything that is open at church. Sometimes we feel to be a good Christian, we have to do it. We have to be there. We have to do it, and if we don't, then we're not as good, or we're going to be looked on as not a good Christian because we're not doing VBS and we're not doing women's ministry and we're not doing this and we're not doing this and sometimes God doesn't call us to do all of
previous
that.
episode on burnout.
Right? We'll list that in the show notes. Absolutely.
But absolutely, Amy, you're
So-
absolutely right.
So it takes it from the relationship with God to being a works-based relationship
Yeah.
because I have to do all of these things
Yeah.
because this woman over here is doing all of these
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you think too about, it's literally the air we breathe in our culture at large, and it infiltrates church culture, that we measure outcome. We are so outcome focused.
Yeah.
And so if we can put it on a spreadsheet and see that,
Yeah.
I'm contributing and I'm a viable member of this community because A,
And
B,
it's
C,
growing.
D,
Right.
then we tend to do that versus look at the fruit as the Lord would have us see the fruit of the Spirit, right? And so, so I think that also contributes to this
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
feeling that we have.
Well,
Yeah.
in 2 Corinthians 10:12, the Bible says, we do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with someone who commends themselves. They measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves. They are not wise. So we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to
Right.
someone who, especially someone who is
Yeah.
commending themselves, because it's like following after someone who's very prideful and self-centered and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it does say they are not wise. They are not wise. So the second way that comparison is sticky is that comparison aligns ourselves with others instead of Jesus. And I think we've already hit on this, like we've talked about this a lot already. And anything that takes our eyes off of Jesus is not good. I mean, it's just going to lead us down a wrong path. But here's what can happen if we take our eyes off of Jesus. We become disappointed in God, in our gifts, and God's timing, because we're comparing what God is doing in our lives to what God is doing in somebody else's life. And that story's not the same.
That resonated.
Or what we
feel
can
that.
see above the iceberg.
Right.
That's what it looks
Right.
like he's doing. We're not seeing all the pain that he may be using in their life to bring that
Yes.
transformation.
Yes.
Right?
So
It's like,
right.
whoa, watch what you're asking for,
That's
girl.
exactly
You know?
right.
I
So-
remember Christine Kane talking about that at one time. And she's like, everybody says they want to be Christine Kane. They want to have the ministry that Christine Kane was. She goes, but you put in the struggle that Christine Kane has put in. And I'm like, that's it. Like, she has just an amazing testimony of the things that the Lord has brought her through. You know, and she wouldn't be Christine Kane unless the Lord had brought her through all of those struggles. But so jealousy of others and the shame that it brings. That's kind of hitting that on the head too. Insecurity in your own gifting, as evidenced by feelings of insecurity. How often have we watched somebody and what God is doing in their life and just became incredibly insecure? You know, like, I think the underlying belief in that is God will do it for them, but he won't do that for me. You know, and that's just not true. I mean, that's the verse of the day today was you ask because you have not. How's it go? You have not because you have not asked. Right, because you have not asked.
Yeah.
And so, and that's it, you know.
Do you think that also, because, I have some introverted friends, and I think sometimes they see the people, like, on the stage at church and, decorating for VBS and all of this stuff, and they're, like, behind the scenes doing things. And so we put, like, a value on the things that you can
On the
see
spotlight.
and the things that you can't see. So they think that, my gift is not very good because I'm a behind the scenes person, which they do amazing things behind the scenes, but because it's not out front, like, it may make them feel
And some it
insecure.
might. Yeah, some it might. I just told my church up front, I said, here's the counseling ministry. And I said, and you won't see it. You won't see people coming in and out of the office. You won't hear about it on Sunday mornings because of confidentiality. Like, you will not see this ministry, but you have to trust that the Lord is working in it.
That's right. That's
You know?
beautiful.
So I told them that up front. But the truth about our comparison taking our eyes off of Jesus is that your assignment is personal and faithfulness is the key measure. Like, there's no other measure except faithfulness here. You know, that's what we should be measuring ourselves with.
Yeah. And I love this word personal. Just like with everything else, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to him,
Yeah.
he's going to meet us uniquely, individually, exactly where we are. And I talk to my clients about this idea too. This has been kind of an ongoing revelation for me in my practice, but it's like timing and readiness. I think we tend to separate those two things, but in reality, timing and readiness go together and they both belong to the Lord. And so how many times are we like, we might see somebody else doing something and go, I'm ready, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
And the Lord might say, you are ready, but it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, oh my gosh, the time is now. Like, I'm so fired up. I'm ready to run into this thing, but I'm not ready. And I don't know I'm not ready, but he does.
Yes.
And so he's not going to open that door yet.
Yeah.
And so just sitting in the faithfulness of that and trusting that it's a hard practice of like, okay, I do feel ready, but maybe it's just not the right time.
Yeah.
I think that is awesome. We want to segue into the helpful reframe, because instead of asking, why is her ministry larger, bigger, better, brighter, like you were talking about, instead ask, am I being faithful with what God has entrusted me with? And I just think that is that's a real key. First of all, just to sit and say, Lord, bring my awareness to what you have entrusted me with. How often are we on autopilot? And like, that's the first step into gratefulness, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But to be able to be grateful for our gifts just undermines this whole comparison.
Gosh, that's so true. Just having the eyes to see the goodness and mercy that are promised. Yeah.
But girls, if you find yourself in leadership positions, you have to be careful because we often set that trap. You know,
Say more about that.
we create that mindset because we speak in outcomes, or we say this is what it could look like, or this is what it should look like.
Yeah.
Right. And so you guys are experiencing God language, you know, and that's part of, I think we need to get back to what does it mean to lead spiritually, not just utilize all the tools. You know, where is God leading? What is He saying? Because that's going to be the metrics.
Yeah.
And there may be times that there's, just like you say, you're not going to see this counseling practice. You need to understand there may be times they're not going to see things, or you're not going to see them, but it doesn't mean you're not successful in what God's called you to do.
Look at
And that
Moses.
God's not working right.
You know,
He
yeah.
never actually set foot in the promised land, but he remains one of the fathers of our faith. I mean, yeah.
I think that's one of the things I appreciated. Of course, Henry Blackaby's with Jesus now, but I think that's one of the things I appreciate most when he was living and going through the study. And I'm just fresh because I'm going back through it again.
I love that study. That was such instrumental in my life.
Well, he would say things that some people could discredit. That's an old man. You know, he's just older in his age, or because he can make it sound so simple. But that older gentleman had lived enough life to know what it was for the people that should have been encouraging him to come beat it down. But he wasn't like throwing him under the bus. He was just saying, because his eyes were so on Jesus, doesn't matter what you're saying, you're not the one that's giving me my marching orders.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that has hit me fresh because a lot of you guys are finding yourself in churches that the dirt's hard. You may feel like you're doing things and you're seeing no results. And it's important, back eyes on God. But I love what you said earlier, because that was one of my questions coming into this. Show us the diagnostic. How do we know when the temperature's there? You use the word a red flag. You know,
red flag.
if we're doing the things that we should be doing, take that back to God. God, this is how I'm feeling. These are my thoughts. But I'm still showing up doing the things that I think I should be doing. It's when I'm drifting, not doing those things, that I have to have the heart check, that I may have it out of balance. But
And I think when, we were talking about being in leadership, I think on a previous podcast episode, we talked about relational ministry. And I think when your focus is on relationships, as opposed to the task and the matrix around the task, then not only then is the tasks become, well, it may take longer to see, you know what I'm saying?
That's the truth.
It may take longer, but you can, accountability is easier. When you've got people on board with relational ministry, then your accountability is easier and it's safer. Like it creates a safer environment to learn and grow and mess up, or not mess up and fix it. That
Vulnerability, intimacy, connection, authenticity, all those things that actually bring us into communion.
Leslie, do you think it's harder now because we're in such a visible social media live stream world? In other words, my late husband Keith used to say, Carmen, they didn't really remodel that house in 30 minutes. It was just a 30-minute episode. There was a lot of going in there, a lot of people, and they edited it down.
Yes.
We edit reels from do you think that it's maybe more of a problem or harder to navigate because, especially in the church world, you're seeing what everybody else is doing. You're following because you want to see what everybody else is doing, which puts that in front of you.
And that's exactly the comparison that we're talking about, that we're comparing a not reality, against something that we're saying, okay, we need to make this the reality. But it's not reality that we're comparing it to.
Yeah, it just seems like, in my mind, as I'm listening to you girls talk, it just seems the context has so shifted now because there's so much more volume that we're not even looking for. It's just, it's there. You know what I mean? We don't stumble across when we happen to hear about there used to be the days you'd read the newspaper or you'd go to a gathering to report out what God's doing. And now it seems like, man, every morning you choose to follow certain ones and they've already done the edit and putting out the cherry on top of the cake.
That's
you know what I mean?
That is
anyway.
Right. That's right.
And I think one thing that is God has shown me in my life and my business and everything is that trust Him to speak to me in the exact way that I need to hear Him. So if I'm not hearing, if I pray, hey, Lord, I have this idea and I want to do this, tell me yes or no. And if I'm not hearing a no, then I'm going to keep stepping out until He tells me no, knowing that He will. Like I've had lots of doors close. And so like to trust our Father who knows us so well, who, for me, starting a business, it's kind of like learning to walk, and I'm gonna fall down, and like my father is there just ready to grab my hand, but he wants me to step.
Yeah.
He doesn't want me, but it's trusting him
Yeah.
to know me, to speak to me. And because I think we get into a thing, you know, when we compare, like, okay, Lord, why are you not talking to me, but you're talking to her? And and it's trusting that he will talk to us in the exact way that he needs us to talk to us, and trusting in that.
Yeah. And yes, and trusting in that, and be listening for that, because it's like Henry Blackaby says, like, there's so many ways that the Lord speaks to us, and it could be our spirit resonates with a song that's on the radio, or we see a Bible verse that is, you know, like pops up on our screen or something, and then it resonates, like our spirit resonates with that as truth for that day, and
Or somebody over here tells you something, and then 2 days later that person says the
yes,
same thing almost
and then-
verbatim, and then somebody else the next day, and you're like, okay.
and it's those
Okay.
things, it's really those things that we should be
Yes.
looking for, instead of what's happening in Jane's life and what's happening in Sarah's life, or whomever,
And
you know,
making
like,
meaning of that for our own
Yes.
stories.
right,
Yeah.
right. Because I'll tell you, if women were following me as a mom, as a young mom, we got to Easter Sunday. I have 4 daughters. Okay, so Easter was great with hats and gloves and patent leather
so fun.
shoes
Yeah.
and dresses and like the whole 9 yards, right? New dresses all around, and give me an excuse to go shopping and I'll do it. And so Doug was preaching, and we go to church separately because he gets there early to prepare for the sermon. So I have the 4 girls, one young enough to be in a pumpkin seat.
Yeah.
You know, so 3 littles in a pumpkin seat, dressed up. We all get to church, and I sit down and I take that baby out of the pumpkin seat and set her on my lap.
Oh, no.
Church is getting ready to start, and she's poopy as poopy can be.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have a diaper on.
Okay, please comment if that's
And I
Oh, Leslie, God bless you for telling that story. That's such real life. That is
and
real
it was
life.
Doug's grandma's church. Like, you know, it was a day. It was just a day.
Yeah.
And I'm going,
Oh, my
okay,
gosh.
put the baby back in the pumpkin seat. Diaper bags at home.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah.
Baby doesn't have a diaper on. Okay, I'm like, put the baby back in the car seat. Put the baby back in the car. Put the girls back in the car. For the love of Pete, we went home. We did not attend church that day. Oh, my new Easter dress. Oh my gosh, it was nice.
Yeah. Oh, my
It was a
gosh.
day. But anyway, so
And you survived.
be careful who you follow. Right? Be careful who you follow, ladies. But okay, so our third and fourth sticky statement.
Yes.
Sticky
I'll
thing.
say we went from sticky to
I know,
that.
right?
It's all, I was
We're
gonna
gonna get
say,
back on
it's all
track.
still resonating.
We're going to get back on track. Comparison undermines 2 of the most important gifts in our lives: gratitude and creativity. When we're comparing ourselves to other people, we forget to be thankful
Gosh,
about our
that's
own
good.
gifts. You know, being thankful for our own gifts is the segue to allowing God to use our stories in a way for kingdom purpose.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, there's no using that story because we're comparing it to so and so and so and so, and the Lord can't use that. You know, He has to be able to be the one to write that story based on what He knows we've been through, like pumpkin seats and Easter Sundays, you know. But He knows what we've been through. He knows what we struggle with. He knows what kind of insecurities that we deal with. He knows what's happened to us in the past and where those lies are incited. You know, like He knows all those things, right? So He's the only one that can write that story in a way that is going to heal us and be used for kingdom purposes. So gratitude for your gifts is incredibly important. And creativity, when we think about losing the creativity that God has given us, this breaks my heart because I'm a creative person at heart. You know, stick me in a room with watercolors and I'm fine for 2 hours. You know, but
And a diaper bag.
and a diaper bag. Yes. Don't forget the diaper bag for the love. But that creativity, that's how God made us. And all of our creativities are different. Like I wouldn't paint the same picture that Amy would paint or Carla would paint or Carmen would paint. You know, and so our creativity is part of our personal story. And if we're focused on how she's doing it or how she's doing it or even how our mom did it, you know, we lose that creativity that God is just begging us to allow him to pour out through us for kingdom purposes. So what that leads to when we take our eyes off of Jesus and we forget to be thankful, it leads to lack of peace. It leads to bitterness. It leads to increased anxiety and a loss of God's blessing. This breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. And so the truth is, though, that gratitude focuses us on what God has given us. It realigns our focus and our heart back to him.
I love this. I think, is it November we're going to be talking about the psychology and physiology, like the neuroscience of gratitude?
Oh, yes.
And really get into that and how the Lord uses that, for all of these kingdom stories. But anyway,
I love that. Oh, I love that. I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be so fun. So the helpful refrain here is that when comparison rises, stop and ask yourself, what has God uniquely, like that's the key, uniquely given me in this season? You know, and when you focus on those unique gifts, I mean, it's like holding his hand, you know, like he's pouring how he made you and how he equipped you. And it's different. It's different than anybody else. And it just, like that alone make you feel very special.
Yeah.
You know, very special. And so our key scripture is rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. If you ever wonder what God's will is for you, start there.
Yes.
Just start there.
And this makes me think, like, when we are comparing and we don't have the gratitude, we don't have the creativity, how many women are out there who God has this grand plan, but because they have compared to other people, like, it's not being realized. Can you imagine if we all, like, just did this and knew that God had this plan for us? Like, what would happen?
Amy, I think that's why it's, I don't know why, but the concept of the leader is just so resonating in my mind as I'm listening to you guys talk, because I think we do that so many times. We drench the spirit there. You know, we kill any creativity. Oh, great idea, come back in 6 months. Great idea. You know, whether that's in a specific ministry in a church or the ministry that God has you in the marketplace, you know, doing. And, you know, that creative side is there. And I love what you said. I'm still going back to, you used the word red flags. When do they see this? And I know myself, I shared, you know, there's times I have to take my thought captive. God, why am I resistive? A lot of times those symptoms for me is not that I want the other person to be hurt, but if you ever find yourself celebrating that there's a crisis in somebody else's life that you thought might have been a few steps ahead of you, that's a pretty good red flag,
Yes,
girls,
that's
that
a red
you're
flag.
already into disease territory.
Yeah.
Do you know,
absolutely.
and I think there's probably more of that than we realize. I just listened to a podcast. I had a lot of road time, windshield time last week, which is good for me to kind of listen. And, you know, we hear this comparison game in ministry a lot, but it was a pastor, a pretty well-known pastor, saying he had to confess this to God. God gave him a timeout, and he realized that he was doing the comparison of baptisms and the comparison, but it was a blind spot, the way he was measuring it to think, I'm being healthy. God really had to take some scales off of his eyes, and I think that's true of Carmen and all of us, that we may be setting the not the trap to catch it. We may be the ones releasing the moth, you know,
right.
sometimes. Does that make sense?
It
I don't
does.
know why that's resonating, but
Yeah,
but
it
I
does.
think that's important, man. If there's there was an older gentleman that went to church. He was on staff here years ago, Jim Doom, and he taught me the concept. He was in church with me for a little while, of godly jealousy. Now, I don't know if it's right, but this was my definition from Jim Doom. He said, I have a godly jealousy on this. I want what you have, but I want something better for you. So that was his way of taking it in check, you know, because he realized, like, oh man, I'm wishing I could see those results, or I wish I had the same leader team that they have, or I wish that. And then that's why I point back to Blackaby. If you're following God and eyes are on Him, and you're spiritually leading, or whatever God's doing in your life, you may never see the type of fruit that you think you signed up for. If you were in the marketplace, your business may go out of business. And it does not mean that you weren't in line with exactly God was wanting to do, because he's transforming something inside of us, right, to be more his likeness. And that's really what we should be measuring. So if we're comparing those, you said the fruit of the Spirit, that needs to really be Carmen's measurement.
Yes.
You know, if I'm measuring anything different, I mean, yes, there's area of improvement. How are they doing discipleship? How are they doing this? How are they engaging? Go learn, right? What can I pull? But if it gets much deeper than that, and I'm starting to look at the person, and not wanting something better for them as I'm wanting what they have, there's a problem there. There's a problem there.
And I think that's really a key strategic thought in leadership, because it does take your eyes off of Jesus, because you're comparing not status, but check all the boxes.
Yes.
You know,
and I think it's so critical too to remember blessing as Jesus defines it in the Sermon on the Mount. I mean, when we are looking at somebody and saying, I want blessings like that, I want blessings like that, but really, like you're saying, okay, I start a business and it fails, then I'm like, why didn't you bless me? When blessing is never defined in the Bible as success, monetary prowess, anything like that. It's defined as suffering, as sorrow, as being poured out for people, as all of these kinds of things, as learning, growing. And so I love that you mentioned, Leslie, earlier that that comparison leads to a loss of God's blessings, because it leads to a loss of being able to see that this actually is a blessing. Even though it hurts, even though I wouldn't choose it, this is doing something in me that's going to last for eternity. That's changing generational patterns in my family, in my church.
But there's the gratitude.
That's it.
That would be Elizabeth Elliot. God, I don't know why you brought this, but there's nothing I can give you back that you've not brought me first. So whatever it is, however painful, whatever it is, you gave it to me, so thank you. Don't quite know what you're going to do with it, but I'm back what you said. I'm trusting, and the more we walk with him, you see how he's taken the hard. You know there's something good coming, because you've lived some of those days now out of the hardest of the hard. But to say, here it is, and as Elizabeth would say, how many times I just have to keep taking it back to him. I remember you gave it to me. God is still in my hands. Hey, it looks like you brought it to me. Forgot I had this, but it's back out. Bringing it to you. Thanks for bringing. So,
and I love that, because that is a perfect segue to introduce our topic for next month, because we're going to be talking about what God does in when the hard things come. And so we're really looking forward to that topic with Amy next month. And so this has been an excellent time together. I love this topic, and ladies, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll get back with you. We'll link all of the resources in the show notes that we talked about, and it's just been really awesome to have you join us today.
So thanks for joining, as Leslie said, and share this out. Get your other ladies in your church, or other churches that in your area. Share this out, because these are resources meant to help you. And then we want to hear from you. So we have our blog. We want your stories to kind of match how this looked in your life. So there's a place that we need those stories, because your story is going to help somebody else.
That's right.
So thanks for joining us today. You're not going to want to miss the next episode, as you've already said. So be ready to join. And best way to do that, of course, is subscribe. I'm part of the recording, and when my email hits that, hey, it's dropped, I go listen to that podcast that day. And honestly, I've been listening to these, and there's times I'm driving in and think, that was us, and then it's like there's the fun moments. It's like, seems like so long ago since we sat around the table, and so we want you to know you're sitting right here with us.
That's right.
So thanks for joining us today, and we hope to see you back here next month on the Priority Podcast.
1, 2, 3,
Unshackled!